Aloha, and welcome back to the third episode of Talk Story with House Majority. My name is Della Albalati, and I serve as the House Majority Leader for the 31st Legislature of the state of Hawaii. We hit another milestone in the 2021 legislative session today with the first lateral deadline. By first lateral, all bills referred to more than one committee must move to their final committee in the originating chamber, in our case, the House. This means a couple of things. First, we saw a flurry of hearings in committees this week, culminating in 166 bills moved on the floor of the House today to make it to their final committees. Second, we also saw many of this session's hot topic bills, such as gambling, not receive the support they needed to continue to move forward, at least for this session. Next week, we will see bills being heard or not getting heard in their final committees. On deck will be many discussions and testimony in front of the Finance, Consumer Protection and Commerce, and Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs committees before we hit other important milestones, first decking and first crossover. On that note, this week's theme and focus is on the courts and judicial matters. So let's jump right into this week's episode where we focus on Hawaii's courts. To start us off, I was able to visit with Chief Judge Mark Browning of the First Circuit Court here on the island of Oahu. Judge Browning was able to tell me about how the courts have been operating throughout the pandemic, the adjustments they've made, and the benefits of an increasingly digital judicial landscape. Thank you, Judge Browning, for having me here in your chambers and in the First Circuit Court. So what is your job title here at the Circuit Court?
I am the Chief Judge of the First Circuit, which means I'm in charge of all the trial courts across this particular island.
From your point of view, what has been the biggest challenges for the courts operating in the times of COVID-19?
First and foremost has always been the safety of our employees and the judges and all the folks that dedicated their lives to the judiciary. And of course, as important or more important is the safety of the public.
So courtrooms typically are places of public gathering, of social gathering and work, and really business, essential business of the state. And the courts have had to physically change to accommodate. So what are some of these changes that you folks have instituted here in the courts?
Well, first off, I think if you go to the three main courthouses across the island of Oahu, you'll see that that one of the things that everything is really centered around safety. That extends also into our courtrooms. So in our courtrooms, everything has been measured out to be able to maintain social distancing and of course the mask mandate, those kinds of things.
So how have these physical changes impacted the work of the judiciary, particularly the changes in the courtroom?
In one respect, it has required us to go slower because, the number of people that can be in a particular courtroom has to be limited. So cases have to be staggered. I think on the other hand, what we've seen is that we have courtrooms where there are not a lot of people, but everything is being done virtually. One of the questions that we're thinking about is what are we going to be able to, from what we've learned and in terms of what we are doing now, what lessons are we going to be able to use to improve the court process? When the pandemic first hit, I think one of the things that it did is it catapulted the judiciary from the 20th century into the 21st century. I wanted to keep stats. I wanted the data to show us what was working, what wasn't, what adjustments we needed to make. So one of the interesting aspects of the data has been is that more people are attending the traffic virtual hearings since the pandemic. What we're doing now virtually in those types of settings is giving greater access and easier and comfortable and convenient access to the public, to our court system.
So it actually cuts down on litigation costs, so that could be overall good for the system.
Actually, we conducted a full-blown trial. It was a complicated case, and it was a bench trial. It was all Zoom. We try to be innovative and think outside the box. And we're really not about we can't do it. We're really about how can we do it. And we take the problem and understand that one of the roles that we have is to be problem solvers so that we provide access. So when it comes to sort of these issues like backlogs, let's take for example, the COVID violations, where we had that were classified as misdemeanors. There were 66,000 of those cases. And, you know, normally in just a year, you'd have 22,000. And we had 66,000 violations sent to us by the HPD for a period that covered about 2 or 3 months. So now, what are the mechanics of that? I mean, that information has to be inputted into our system before the prosecutors and the public defenders can even get involved. So that was a huge challenge. So what did we do? We simply answered the call by saying, okay, this is our challenge. We know we don't have enough people. So let's essentially rally and ask our people across the state, the folks in Maui, the folks on the Big Island, the people who work in the clerk's office, whether they would be able to help. We asked the staff that work in circuit court, because this was primarily a district court problem. And we had maybe 60 to 70 people volunteer. And so we were able to clear up that backlog fairly quickly. We were ready to start jury trials in July. I mean, we had it all figured out in terms of how we were going to move different spaces and use of spaces around, because we weren't going to be able to do certain things in the normal sort of setting of a courtroom. So let's take the selection of a jury, for example. That requires a number of people coming to court. So we had to have the space, and we don't have the courtroom space, so we moved it over to district court. Now, what happened is that there was the surge in the summer, and we had to sort of all back down. Now we have started jury trial. That has been limited to sort of the smaller cases. We now, by the end of March or earlier, will be able to do larger cases. And what we're going to do is we're going to think outside the box. So what we've done is we've come up a plan where we're going to use the atrium downstairs. We have a multi-purpose room on the 3rd floor, and we have another room on the 2nd floor. So if we have a jury pool of 70, we're going to divide them up.
So the judiciary is being really creative with space, and you're really using your people creatively to do the IT that's got to be involved and coordinating. So it's a lot of coordination too.
Right, and the other thing that is something that you as a representative know. I mean, we're trying to deal with the economic realities that we're facing.
And I will say that one of the bills that the legislature is looking at is how can we ensure in times like this, government agencies are not charging for that space, because that's simply like, it's just moving money, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. And so those are the kinds of things that we've learned how to assist groups like the judiciary. Well, can I just end on one topic and explore with you? So I know you are a very big fan of mediation and problem solving and you know, alternative dispute resolution. So what is that like in times of COVID? And are we seeing more of it in the arena of things like family court or eviction proceedings? Is mediation continuing to play a big role, and do you foresee that continuing as well?
I think so. I'm actually going to be on a panel of national experts talking about this particular issue. But the sense is across the nation that mediation, even virtually, is sometimes much more effective than doing it in person. We've continued to do, for example, when we talk about mediation, the judicial or the judiciary sort of role in that realm is to do settlement conferences. And we continue to do settlement conferences. All our judges know how important it is to resolve conflict. You know, allowing someone in a black robe who you don't know, have no idea who they are, what their values are, who, in my situation, you know, when I had red hair, sort of was a carbon copy of Ronald McDonald, you know, you kind of have to have an understanding that, you know, why let a complete stranger take control of your life? The value of mediation is that you're not going to get everything you want, but you're going to have control of your life. And you're going to be able to make the decisions. And yeah, it's going to require compromise. But that's a lot easier to live with than a complete stranger imposing whatever decision it is.
So it's been really great talking with you, Judge, and I think to hear that the courts really never shut down during the pandemic, that you folks were always open, that your staff did a heroic job in addressing some of these issues was really good to learn.
It's heartwarming every day to look around, not just at the folks that work in this building or any of our other buildings, but to look around and see so many individuals who are heroes. They may be unsung, but they're heroes and they're inspirational. And so it makes what we do very small, and I'm so appreciative to be living in this community and to have leadership we have across our state government.
I want to thank Judge Browning for sharing with me the work of the judiciary. It's great to see the courts continuing to operate while also ensuring access to justice for our people. Building upon Judge Browning's visit, my guest today is Chief Justice Mark E. Recktenwald of Hawaii Supreme Court. Chief Justice Recktenwald serves along with 4 other justices and as the 5th Chief Justice in the court's history since Hawaii became a state. On January 27th, in a joint address to the House and Senate, we heard from Chief Justice Recktenwald about the state of the judiciary. Welcome, CJ. Thank you so much for joining us. As we heard, the courts are continuing to work through the pandemic. You shared with us your judiciary address. I want to just open this up to you and ask you, what's happening with the courts? What's happening from your perspective?
Well, thank you so much, Rep. Bellotti, for your leadership and for the House majority for giving us this opportunity to speak with the community and share what's been happening. And, really, it's been obviously an extraordinary past year. And really what, we've learned a couple of things from the pandemic. One is, you have to be willing to adapt and try new things. And for us, that was moving from, a system that was built on people being in the courthouse, coming to the courthouse physically, to using remote hearings to minimize the number of folks who are coming in. And, we really went from, almost no remote hearings to, I think in the last 4 months of the year, we've used 128,000 hearings of some kind in courts across the state where people were appearing remotely. So we really went from 0 to 60 in, just a very short period of time. And really, transform the model of what courts are and what they can be. And, that was something, we talked about, we'd looked at before. And, we really had looked even at using online dispute resolution as sort of a new tool for the judiciary. But this forced us to really move into the 21st century, as Chief Judge Browning said. So that was really, it's transformational, and I think it's going to shape who we are in the future. And it's something that we're really trying to look at and figure out how we can incorporate it into who we are going to be going forward. And really the keys are making us more accessible to people, reducing barriers to justice, and making us more transparent because, people can more easily participate in their court hearings if they're able to do so remotely rather than, for example, having to come down to district court to contest a traffic citation. They take off the morning, drive down, park. This way they can log on to a Zoom proceeding and it's much faster, more convenient. And so that makes us more accessible, which is really what we should be about. So it really has been as challenging and as horrible as the impacts have been throughout our community. It's forced us to sort of grow, adapt, and I think ultimately change for the better.
So before the pandemic, I know about your commitment, Chief Justice, to the community and making sure the courts are accessible. And so much of that meant people coming into the courthouses. But now that we're in this virtual environment, we are doing things differently, even here at the legislature. But, in certain places where you have to deal with, community court, where you really sometimes do need that person to person, or you need to connect people with services. What are you seeing happening with the court's role in dealing with those specific courts and also with just the issue, just generally, all these tough issues that come before the court?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, there's some types of proceedings and we never shut down completely in person. There are, initial appearances in serious criminal cases, restraining orders in domestic violence cases where we still had people coming in our courthouse even in the very early weeks of the pandemic. But as we've been able to transition a lot of proceedings online, there are still others like jury trials that, really, especially in the criminal cases, have to be done in person. There's a constitutional right to confrontation. And so we spent a lot of time planning the resumption of jury trials, really meticulously measuring the courtrooms, building plexiglass barriers, obtaining air filtration systems, and doing walkthroughs with the bar, having Department of Health come and walk through. And so, we were, as Judge Browning said, ready to go in August. We slowed down because of the surge that came in late summer, but we've restarted across the state now. We've had about 20 jury trials. And we're very, very grateful to folks who come in and appear as jurors. So that part of our operation remains in person. But another part that I'd like to talk about is our community outreach court, which is a very special program that's been around now for about 3 years, and it's really targeted at addressing always nonviolent, low-level offenders who are petty misdemeanor cases, often experiencing homelessness, who just have found themselves in a cycle of coming into court, incurring fines, sometimes bench warrants, not being able to pay those off, back again, arresting and cycling, getting arrested and cycling through the system. And, that was something we realized we had to do something different, and we had to find a more effective way to intervene. And that's been community outreach court, which we go out into the communities. The prosecutor, public defender go out and engage with folks, particularly in communities where there are a lot of homeless individuals, and identify those who might want to participate in this program. The hallmarks are accountability. Folks have to perform community service. If they can't pay the fine, so community service. We make services accessible to them, and counseling, housing, whatever. And we go out to the communities where they are, which traditionally we've done in person. Now we're starting to do that again remotely, and that's something we're very, very excited about. And I really thank Judge Darrell Lendia, who's been a leader in that court here on Oahu.
Well, that's a really great segue to our next community segment, our next episode, community segment with one of our two representatives. So each episode we visit with representatives, and this time around I was able to visit with Representative Scot Matayoshi of Kaneohe. We're going to go and see a visit with him at the state hospital, where we got a glimpse of the new state-of-the-art facility, isolation and quarantine units that have been set up there to respond to the pandemic, and then have an opportunity to speak with staff and members at the Joint Outreach Center, where they're hoping to have a community outreach court in the future. We learned about the resources at the Joint Outreach Center that they continue to provide and the ones that have changed due to the pandemic. So let's go to Rep. Matayoshi. So Representative Matayoshi, thank you for inviting us to come visit this facility. Why is it so important for your district and your community?
This new facility is made to be much more secure so that we have fewer escapees, we have fewer people exiting the state hospital directly into the community that may be a danger to the community. It's also really important for these forensic patients to have proper treatment. So this new building is structured to properly treat forensic patients, and I'm hoping that the building that they're being moved out of, Goonsburg, can be used for non-forensic patients. So we have increased beds for people who did not commit a crime or not court ordered, so homeless that might be picked up off the street, people living with their families right now who may need that mental health treatment. Now we're going to actually have beds for them to get the proper treatment they need and get them out of the community, off of the streets, somewhere safe. All right, well, I'm here with Ron Heidelberg, the CEO of the Hawaii State Hospital here in beautiful Kaneohe. Ron, could you tell us a little bit about the new building and maybe the purpose and need behind it?
Oh, yeah, sure. The new building patient facility is a 144-bed facility. It has a lot of treatment rooms inside the building. So the first floor is the treatment mall. And so the treatment mall has a courtroom. It also has a chapel, It has a lot of group rooms that we can try to rehabilitate patients with. And so our main focus is to admit patients, rehabilitate them, and get them back into the community safely. Yes.
Why did the state hospital need this new building?
Okay, the state hospital needed this building because we ran out of bed space. And the lower campus, if you see, we use those group rooms that we used to have and classrooms for patient rooms, and so it got really crowded. And what this new facility will do is help us to categorize the different types of patients we have, and then we can really specialize their care that way.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the dynamic between the forensic patients, non-forensic patients, and the problem that's been happening with the state hospital?
Okay, so the way we can categorize them now, we'll be able to separate them out like that and have a high security unit, like an all-male unit, and then we'll have rehab units like that. And so we can really have specialized care for each level of care as they get ready to reintegrate into the community.
Okay, great. And so just to clarify, by forensic patients, we mean court-ordered patients. Can you tell me a little bit about how the new building is structured to handle those court-ordered patients?
98% of our patients right now are court-ordered. So you have to have committed a crime to come in. Sometimes the charges are dropped and then they're civilly committed, but they're still a little too dangerous to release. So the new building, when you come in, there's one way in and one way out for the patients, and one way in, one way out for the staff. This way we can really do our risk assessments and give them what the category that they need to be in. So we have fences that are 16-foot fences for security. We want to make sure that when we take patients outside, the community is safe. And one of our main objectives is community safety. And we want to make sure the community is safe, the hospital staff is safe. The nurses station, when you stand at the nurses station, you can see directly down the hallway of each and every hall.
Great. And last question, I know that we're moving the patients from Goonsburg over to the new building. Are there any plans for Goonsburg?
We would like to have a psychiatric secure substance abuse center. About over 80% of our patients right now have a substance abuse issue, and we can definitely better serve them if they're in their own environment and had other people around that are struggling with the same illnesses they have.
So do you hope to be able to take non-forensic patients off, like homeless that may have mental illness, off the street if we can open up Goonsburg?
Yeah, right now Goonsburg we can separate it into 4 different units, and we can have for homeless, we can have for substance abuse, we can have for people that are just struggling and looking for other alternatives. With our unique campus, patients can be admitted here, and we can transfer them over to Goonsburg and not have to worry about getting court orders for substance abuse, because many of our folks, as I said, over 80%, either come in with paraphernalia or admit to using, but we have no place to really treat them.
Okay, great. That sounds like a really great missing puzzle piece to our mental health puzzle that we're dealing with right now. So Ron, tell us about this new facility or new project that we're working on here.
Oh yeah, the new project, Aluhu, is really nice. We started out here a few months back with just a clear field, and it was just grass and dirt and all of that. So this facility is good for quarantining as well as isolation. So it's keeping the community safe as we live in this COVID environment.
That's great. Let's go in and take a look.
Okay.
All right, so Dana, tell us about this facility.
The type of clients that we have at our facility include COVID positive and COVID negative clients. In addition, we are specifically focused on behavioral health clients. So we're able to take individuals who are diagnosed with like schizophrenia, schizoaffective, and help them to not only quarantine, but also isolate. So isolating is for the COVID positive clients, and then quarantining is for our clients who are requiring a little bit of assistance with links to services. And some of those services include like getting them housing, getting them a psychiatrist, like linked to a psychiatrist, getting them support from within the community to like help them to maintain stability and gain independence within the community. With every single room, we have a twin-size bed inside there, a television, phone, Wi-Fi access. They have like yoga mats and stuff. So we try to make the rooms as comfortable as possible for our clients. during their stay.
All right, would you mind if we take a look inside a couple of these rooms?
Absolutely.
So this is one of the new units. Quick shout out to Alexander and Baldwin for donating some money to help furnish these units. Actually, the money is going to be going to furnish the new units. There are going to be a number of new containers like this put in both here and at another location to provide not only isolation and quarantine units, but also transitional housing for state hospital patients moving out of the hospital before they move back into our communities, just to kind of help them with that transition.
With their stay here, we do like to make it as comfortable as possible, and we do also provide 3 hot meals a day throughout their stay here, as well as snacks and drinks in between and stuff. So we want to make their stay as comfortable as possible, and that's why we set the room up the way we did.
Yep, so this is the Kaneohe Joint Outreach Center. It's right next to the Kaneohe Police Station. And myself, Representative Kitagawa, and Senator Keoko Lole put this together about a year and a half ago, pre-COVID, to try to address the homeless situation in Kaneohe and along the windward side. So what this facility does is it provides medical services, Medicaid sign-up services, and other social services to homeless on the street, or anyone in the community too, who wants to receive it here free of cost.
And how is this facility funded?
So the facility actually, me, Representative Kitagawa, and Senator Keoko Lole went out and got funding from private organizations, private foundations, businesses for the 3-year pilot program. This facility is a state facility though, so we also had to more or less commandeer it for the 3 years. And it's a true state business collaboration to try to make a big positive impact on our homeless population. We're also partnering with H4, who is running the Kaneohe Joint Outreach Center itself.
And since the pandemic, what has the community seen with the use of services here at this Joint Outreach Center?
So before the pandemic, we had patients walking in for medical services and for social services. Once the pandemic hit, we really saw a drop-off in people walking in, so the Joint Outreach Center shifted its focus. Now the nurses and doctors will actually go more out to the community, to where the homeless are, to administer both medical and social services, and to try to bring them back here if they can. Right across the street, we've got the food stamp welfare program too. One of the big things too that I really love is it provides a permanent mailing address for homeless. I'm really hoping that we see a real positive change in the homeless population on the windward side due to the Joint Outreach Center.
So we're downstairs from the Joint Outreach Center. Can you explain what this space is?
Yeah, so this space is currently being used as kind of a multi-purpose meeting space, but we're hoping to use it for community court so that we can have, again, we're trying to centralize all of the services in one location. Community court is a really great program. It's mostly meant to deal with low-level, non-violent offenses, get rid of bench warrants, get rid of a ticket for someone sleeping in their car, and it gives the judge a lot of latitude. So instead of imposing a fine, they can convert that into community service hours worked. So far, I believe they've cleared about 4,000 violations, mostly from, again, low-level homeless violations of sleeping in the park or whatnot. So we're hoping that the judge can zoom in over here. We're going to be renovating this place to make it more ADA accessible, and we can start holding court proceedings here so that when the homeless come in, they can get their charges cleared or converted to community service hours, and then they can walk right upstairs to the Joint Outreach Center or to the Social Services Office and kind of get everything done all at once.
Well, thank you again for your leadership on this. I think we'll be talking to CJ Recktenwald about the progress of the community court, and we'll definitely follow up with him on this prospect as well. Thanks,
Thanks.
So seeing the continuum of services in Kaneohe, from the state hospital to the future transitional beds to the Joint Outreach Center and a possible community outreach court, the judiciary and the courts really sit at the center of all of these huge challenges that we're facing with regards to mental health, homelessness in the community. So let's return back to CJ Mark Recktenwald to talk a little bit about Hawaii's judiciary and the Chief Justice's priorities for 2021. CJ, I'll throw it over to you. What are some of your priorities for this session?
Well, thank you so much. I mean, one thing, again, I'm very excited to report, that you saw the Joint Outreach Center, that Rep Matayoshi was showing in that video. We're going to be out there with the Community Outreach Court on Monday. So we're really excited. That court is a partnership between the judiciary, the prosecuting attorney's office, and the public defenders with the support of the legislature. And again, we really appreciate the legislature's partnership in so many of these programs that help real people in our community. And we had to, discontinue the in-person part of the program during the worst part of the pandemic, which is really unfortunate because, the court literally, Judge Lendio was out in Waianae, out by the boat harbor conducting court across like a picnic table, from the folks who were appearing. And that was really important. But, obviously because of the pandemic, we had to scale back in person. So we restarted out in Maili back in November. And now the next site that we're restarting is going to be in Kaneohe, and we are going to be using that facility. And so it's going to be fascinating because you'll have a mix of the prosecutor, public defender there in the building, Judge Lendio in her office, the court staff in their offices, service providers remote, and ready to jump onto a link with the clients who are coming into court. So it's really it's a beautiful thing, and I'm glad that we've been able to restart it remotely. It really does offer hope to folks who, I think, just a sort of spiral that people could get into with not being able to pay their tickets, not having sort of just a in court, out of court, in court, out of court, and I think it really does take a toll on people, and they're looking for a way forward, and this court gives them a way forward. That's a win-win for the community and those folks. So we're really grateful and excited to be out there this Monday. So that was very topical. And the other thing I wanted to mention, about the state hospital, and again, you heard, there's an awful lot of folks there who are there because they're referred by the courts. And, one initiative that I know you, Rep. Bellotti, were very involved with was trying to set up programs to be able to divert, nonviolent, petty misdemeanor defendants who, might otherwise be committed out there for forensic reasons, which means, sort of assess whether they can help their lawyer if they have issues and they're not able to assist in their defense, then get them to the point where they can assist in their defense, to go through that entire program of a process of having them incarcerated, then sent to the state hospital, spend months to come back to court to maybe have a time served disposition because it's a relatively, small nonviolent case is really just, and then release them to the community without follow-up services, just seemed like not a great use of our resources. So I know you and others, the governor, and we came together and held a statewide forum in the fall of 19 that identified this new approach of having the ability to divert folks, who are, again, nonviolent, charged with low-level offenses, to give them community-based treatment so that we're not using those beds for those individuals, and we can save them for folks who really need them. So again, it's just rethinking how we're doing criminal justice in a way to make sure that we are, in fact, getting the best results to maintain the safety of the public using the scarce resources we have. So, that's really at the heart of a lot of what we're doing, is trying to find better, more effective ways to get to the root causes of problems. Another program I mentioned in my remarks was Girls Court, which is, again, teenage girls who are coming into the juvenile justice system, getting involved in drugs, theft, other kinds of, beginning to go down a road that we don't want them to go down, and really using a team approach, a judge, court staff, treatment professionals, and involving their families to really just work with them, set up a good peer groups, good mentors, strong role models for them, to help them begin to move in the direction of being able to, live happy, law-abiding lives. And so, that's another program that's really important, and, really our priorities coming into this session. And I really appreciate Chair Nakashima, who will be on the program in a moment, for passing our budget bill out of his committee just yesterday, are to maintain the resources that we have now so that we can continue with these programs. And we realize how hard things are in our community, how many competing demands there are for scarce state resources. So we try really hard to use the funds that we do have in a way that gets the best possible results to protect public safety. And so we're really coming in this year asking to be able to maintain these programs. Our budget was reduced, in the last session. We completely understand why that was. And, we appreciate, Chair Luke and Chair Delacruz, the Finance and Ways and Means chairs, for the hard decisions they have to make. And, we just respectfully come in and try to demonstrate why these programs are important to help people in our community, and respectfully ask for the legislature's support. So budget is our number one sort of focus this session, as I guess it is really kind of across the board. But there are a lot of other issues that I think are important. We're looking at the issues around pandemic citations. And again, there were, as Chief Judge Browning mentioned, there were more than 60,000 citations on Oahu. And I think the thing that's critical there is those were all charged as misdemeanors, full misdemeanors, with almost a year, and up to a year in jail. That means there's a right to counsel, court-appointed counsel, a right to jury trial, and really there needs to be a wider range of options for law enforcement to get compliance with the orders around the pandemic. And so there's legislation going through this session, and we've been working with Rep. Ichiyama and others to try to work through those and come up with just more options for law enforcement. So that's a big focus, and of course issues related to landlord-tenant cases. And with the pandemic, we really are facing a coming sort of deluge of cases, and that can be really devastating for our community. And so, again, in our district court, Judge May, Judge Lendio, and others have been working with the mediation centers and the Legal Aid Society, lawyers who represent landlords, to try to set up a process so as many of these cases as possible can be mediated without coming to the courts, and we can tap into the CARES Act money that's been provided to the state for tenant rental assistance to try to keep people in their homes, be fair to the landlords, and not have the courts overwhelmed with these cases. And, Rep. Nadine Nakamura has been a big leader in that, and we've enjoyed working with her as well.
You talk about all of these initiatives, CJ, and I can see exactly who's working on it. And I think what I appreciate about it, and something that I think is different that our public should know, is the kind of collaboration that it has to take to address these wider problems. So I really appreciate that you have your judges also at the table. And how we talk about these things, we're setting up the process and the framework, and then we have to let the individual cases run through that process and framework. But I think it's so important that we have this kind of dialogue. So I really appreciate it. And your commitment to access to justice. Did you want to mention, because I know you're a longtime proponent of access to justice, but do you want to mention anything about the work of the Access to Justice Commission, or some of the future things you folks are looking at?
I think that, again, we've had a longstanding focus here in Hawaii that started with the creation of the commission back in 2008, a recognition that, there are just huge numbers of people who cannot afford a lawyer to represent them in civil cases. It's really striking in some contexts, our family courts, landlord-tenant, debt collection cases. So we need to give those folks resources so that they can come to court and be able to present their side of the story. So we've done that in a lot of different ways. Self-help centers across the state where attorneys come to volunteer to give, some brief legal information or advice is probably the signature initiative of the commission. Since the first one was opened in Kauai back in 2011, more than 30,000 people have gotten help from those centers across the state at almost no cost to the public. And of course, in the pandemic, we had to make those services remote. So I think we've had 1,400 remote consultations. So again, the idea that we need to focus on access to justice, we need to think about ways to ensure that people are able to come to court and present their side of the story, whether virtually or in person, are critical. And I really appreciate your role, Rep. Bellotti, in that effort. And of course, my colleague, former colleague, Justice Simeon Akoba, was a great leader of the commission, as is Joe Cardoza, a retired judge from Maui. And they're really looking at innovative ways of trying to ensure that people have their voices heard. And, again, with the pandemic, there are opportunities now to make ourselves more accessible through remote technology. And that's important for the commission and important for us, as we have to make sure we're not leaving anyone behind who doesn't have access to Wi-Fi or a phone. And so we really have put an emphasis on trying to show people where there are Wi-Fi spots, show them what they need to do to participate remotely, and have a kiosk here at our Supreme Court Law Library where folks can participate remotely if they don't have a place to do that. So we can't leave people behind because of the so-called digital divide.
Yeah, that topic, the theme of the digital equity has come up time and time again, and it's coming up in schools, at the legislature, at the judiciary. So it really is a topic that crosses all kinds of sectors. We have only 2 minutes, so I want to give you 30 seconds. You want to talk about CIP projects that you have on deck that you're thinking about, and then a final question.
Well, for us, we're very grateful. We were able to open the Keahu'olu Courthouse in Kona back in 2019. We're so grateful we had that facility for that community. And in central Oahu, the Wahiawa Civic Center, which was funded by the legislature last session, that's in the planning stages now. That'll give us a home for our courthouse there, I think enable us to serve the central Oahu community in really a much more meaningful and robust way. So we're very, very grateful for our partnership with the legislature. I think Rep. Perruso is going to talk about that later. Chair Dela Cruz, Chair Luke, obviously all instrumental in giving us those resources, and our judiciary chairs, Chair Nakashima, and Chair Rhodes in the Senate. So we're very grateful. And, really we have this year, we're looking at just fixing stuff. We have leaks, we have, deterioration in our buildings, elevators that don't work, fire alarms that we need to be sure are upgraded. So this year, we're really just looking for shovel-ready, repair and maintenance projects, and we have them across the state, and respectfully asking for support so we can keep our buildings safe and suitable for folks when they do come back in.
I think we're going to be looking at all of those things, and I really appreciate how you really paid attention to the things that are necessary, as well as some of those future projects too. Last 30 seconds. Any closing comments? Last points you would like to make with the public as a takeaway? What they should know about the judiciary?
Well, I think we have the opportunity to create the courts of the future. The court said, if you step back and looked at how do you want a court system to operate in the 21st century, we've had to answer that question and answer it fast. And I think that we have the opportunity to really make a judiciary that's more accessible, more transparent, and as a result, more fair. And we need to take advantage of that opportunity. We will, and we're going to keep serving folks, keeping our community safe, keeping our recovery on track, and making sure that when people are in our courthouses, that we'll do everything possible, and we'll make sure that they're going to be safe when they're here. And that's been our touchstone throughout this pandemic, and that's going to continue to be our touchstone.
Thank you, CJ Recktenwald, so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the time you took to speak with me today, in addition to all of the work that you and your colleagues across the judiciary have done for the people of Hawaii to ensure that the courts remain open to serve them throughout the pandemic and into the future. So as CJ said, we have a second community spotlight to share with everyone. For this one, I visited with Representative Amy Perruso of Wahiawa, another site for the judiciary's community court and potentially the future home of a Wahiawa Civic Center that includes a district court that serves more of Central Oahu. So let's go to Rep. Perruso. Thank you, Rep. Perruso, for having me in your district. Can you explain to me where we are?
Sure. Welcome to District 46. We are actually at the district court, and we're basically, this is the place where people come. This is our rural courthouse. I know that we're talking today a lot about the judiciary and our justice system, and I thought it was really important that we actually here have a discussion about something we're really proud of in Wahiawa, and that's our community court system and the program that we're working on with the judiciary. So I invited Mark Tom. He's a deputy prosecuting attorney, and he's actually been running this program for a few years, and he's our expert on the ground.
Thank you guys so much for having me, Rep. Yes, we are always super excited to be out here in Wahiawa. kind of preaching the gospel of community court and how we can help the community. All these agencies, public defender's office, prosecuting attorney's office, judiciary, seeing this increase of caseload and not really sure what we're going to do and how we're going to adjust to this. And we got a federal grant to start a community court. And really the community court is to address non-violent, low-level offenses. And that's what we're kind of aiming at, is making sure that we could give the judicial system another unique way to address these low-level offenses. So that's kind of the history of how community court got started. But in general, what community court is really being out in the community and doing outreach. And so for us, we really aim to be in non-traditional court settings. And the reason for those settings is when people come to court, they've already been through the court system multiple times. They have a lot of mistrust, a lot of anxiety. We don't want them to feel they have to come to us. We want to come to them. And that's really the gist of what community court is.
Right.
So during the pandemic, what happened to community courts?
It's a very grassroots operation at this point. There's about 5 individuals that physically go to the location. It's myself, the public defender's office, and the judiciary, a project manager from the judiciary, along with a social worker that go out to the location. We set up screens with projectors, and some individuals, if they do not have the technology through their phone to go onto a video conferencing, Zoom or WebEx, they can come in physically, and we social distance and we ensure that there's enough space and we don't have a lot of people there. The remaining individuals will jump on a computer or a phone and access court through Zoom or WebEx, and again, we just handle other cases at that point. In addition, we still provide the social services, which is part of the outreach. So when they come into court, they're able to go into a breakout room with either IHS or legal aid, volunteer legal services. So any type of social services that they need, we make sure that they're provided that opportunity to get that wraparound services.
Yeah, so part of why this is so important is because houselessness has become such an issue in our community, and it's really incumbent upon us to figure out ways to intervene, right? And to make it possible for people to move people back into you know, a more normal existence, to bring them back into society. And so many of the obstacles have to do with the justice system. So I'm so appreciative of this work. Now, are you still in conversation with folks in our houseless community?
We are still working with some of the service providers, such as the Land Bridge, in ensuring that people are still allowed to access and utilize the programs that we have.
Yeah, thank you for that.
No problem.
It's really hard, I think, right now, because the need is becoming even more profound. It's hard to figure out how to move forward, and part of it has to do with thinking about how long we might be in this moment, right? So how deeply do we have to plan for COVID? So,
Well, and I think even outside of COVID, though, what's been proven is that community outreach court is a way to get out to the community and actually access folks who may not have the means with which to get to downtown Honolulu.
Our communities are seeing a lot more of collaboration, and without the assistance of the judiciary and the public defender's office, obviously our office cannot do the work that we're doing. So we are super appreciative of that collaboration.
So, Perruso, where are we now?
Okay.
And what is this site all about?
So this is the site of the existing Civic Center, but I brought you here because it's going to be the site for our new Civic Center, which is a partnership with the judiciary. It'll be a site for our courthouse and multiple state agencies. I also wanted to introduce you to Trish Sproat. She's working with the community, and she's really trying to elevate that community engagement around this question. I think there are a lot of concerns, right? We talked about them in our last meeting, and I think maybe you can talk about the vision, and then also like how you guys are thinking about addressing some of the concerns.
Sure. The Civic Center is something that the community's wanted for decades.
Yep.
So it's been in the community plan. You know, you both know how challenging it is to get CIP funds sometimes to a community. So this is really a multi-decade process finally coming to fruition.
Yep.
The past 2 years, the legislature appropriated some money to the University of Hawaii Community Design Center to work with the community to aggregate a lot of community input. At this point, where we're at is in the design and planning process. So we have taken all of that information that was gathered from the University of Hawaii, and we're continuing to build upon that sort of input from the community. So as the representative said, it's going to be an aggregate of a lot of different state and city services, primarily state services, including a new courthouse. Currently, the courthouse is on leased land on Kilani Street, so all of that will move here. So our role is just to continue to work with stakeholders in the community and make sure that we're fulfilling the vision that they've put forward over the last few decades.
Right, and I think the community planning that she's referencing from the 1980s and 1990s did envision a civic center. I think what's new really is that it incorporates the judiciary and a new courthouse. This is a really important community civic space already. It's kind of important for the imaginary of the community, how we see ourselves as a rural community, a small town. Right here is the library, and then right behind us is High Core, which is our alternative learning center. But this will be separate, and I think there are a couple different design possibilities, but we are looking at the courthouse being separate from a space in which the agencies are sited.
But this really is kind of like a town center.
Yeah, and that's the intention. I think with the planning, the intention is to create a more accessible public space where people can interact with state agencies, but also have some shared space.
Can you speak, either of you, to the importance of this potential site, not just for Wahiawa, but maybe some of the neighboring rural areas?
Yeah, so I think the idea would again be to aggregate services so all of central Oahu had better access to resources. So this actually used to be the site of the WIC services. The building burned down. So I think what you have is people have made do. People are resilient. This is a very resilient community. So the idea is to make sure that all of these different services do have adequate space, are here available to the community. We're next to a mass transit center, so we're right next to the bus depot. So the idea is if people are coming by bus or they're walking, how can we create a single space where people can go to the library, work with DOE, get health and human services, take care of what they need to, and really sort of make this, continue to build this as a town center. So that's the vision.
Well, I'm super excited for Wahiawa, and again, I'm excited about how this is might be a center for other neighboring communities as well.
Yeah, I'm really actually excited about the revitalization prospect, right? I think that it will give the center of town kind of a facelift, and I think it will help our small businesses that surround the area, so I'm excited about that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
For our next guest, I'd like to welcome Representative Mark Nakashima. Thank you for joining us today. Representative Nakashima is a veteran lawmaker who has overseen tough labor issues. This session, he has returned as Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Chair and will now be overseeing a whole new portfolio of issues, including all of the priorities just discussed by CJ Recktenwald. So welcome, Chair Nakashima. Just wanted to throw it out to you right off the bat. What are your priorities for the Judiciary Committee this session?
Oh, Della, thank you very much for having me. There are such a broad variety of things that we have in judiciary. The different laws and tightening up protections for people. We've also added the Hawaiian Affairs aspect to judiciary, and with that comes a whole other bag of interests and needs in the community, and so I'm hoping that we're able to do a little bit more to address a lot of the Native Hawaiian concerns that have kind of gone unaddressed for a number of years. And one of the things that they are always looking for is more money, but that's kind of everybody in the state is looking for more, and so we have to look at other ways of either providing it for them or bringing different aspects or different communities together to get things done where we don't have the money to do it, to pay for it.
Mhm. I think that's a general theme throughout all of our committees this session, that there really is no money, and that what we have to do is figure out ways to restructure government, rethink about these tough issues. So since you brought it up with Hawaiian Affairs, I think, we saw today the resolution regarding the working group for Mauna Kea. Did you want to comment on that? Because I know that that's also affects your district, but that's a tough issue. And
Yeah.
and what do you think? What do you hope to see from that working group?
Yeah, so Mauna Kea is actually physically in my district on the Big Island, and there are a number of different issues that have been brought up over the years regarding um, the happiness of different people with the management of the mountain. And one of the things that we hope to do is bring together a group of mostly Big Island folks to really talk about the issues that are facing us and the use of Mauna Kea and how we can move forward in a positive way to address many of the issues and concerns that have been brought up and to move forward in a very positive way. And so that's what I'm hoping to see from the working group that we are trying to put together.
And I know you and Representative Tarnas, again, I think it's really important that it's legislators from the Big Island who are also part of the conversation, since you have not maybe been really part of the conversation um, uh, in there with all of the other groups. So I think, kudos to you. I know that's going to be a tough challenge, but I know that you folks are up to it. I wanted to ask you, when I think about judiciary, I often think about elections and voter laws. So that also falls into your kuleana. Did you want to talk about some of the bills that you might be handling with elections and voter registration?
Yeah, there are several bills that uh, resulted from the last election, and all of the issues that came up with our first time mail-in voting uh, opportunity really highlighted some of the downfalls or the things that we did not think about as we move forward. And, waiting to like 10, 11 o'clock at night for the polls to even close is something that, we do want to avoid in the future. So we
So I
have,
know that. Yeah.
no,
Go ahead. No, go
So
ahead.
House Bill 201 is kind of a catch-all bill that the Office of Elections put in to kind of deal with all of the issues that they saw coming out of the last election. One of the things that we did do is we uh, adopted another bill that looked at increasing the number of voter registration of voter uh, assistance centers so that they would have more than two and hopefully provide a uh, other opportunities for people who needed to go on voting day to vote to do that. And so we assigned to the county clerks the responsibility of selecting those sites and then announcing the times of operation and so forth. Because this last time around, all voting centers had to be open for 10 days. And this time we're giving flexibility, so not all centers had to be open for the full 10 days or for the full 2 weeks prior to the election.
You folks are also handling some voter registration bills as well. Is that another priority of yours?
Yeah, the voter registration is a priority. Actually, my bill, House Bill 740, is a motor voter registration where the people who are applying for their driver's licenses and permits and so forth will automatically be registered to vote. and provide them the opportunity to participate in their franchise.
Hmm. So you've got judiciary budget, you have election laws, you have voter registration laws, you have mental health issues in your committee, you have Hawaiian affairs issues in your committee. You are also the representative of the iconic District 1, representing the communities of Hilo and Hamakua on Hawaii Island. So what are some of the top priorities for your district?
Oh, Hawaii Island is, I think one of the things that, because of the size of our districts, the infrastructure needs are kind of never ending. And so, the roads are too narrow, the bridges are too old, and there are many things that need to be addressed, and we are getting them addressed very slowly, but people want to see things happening right away, but we are able to address the needs, and in a timely, hopefully that good timeline that allows us to get the projects done before the bridges fall down.
Well, I think it's helpful that we have Senator Schatz now. I think he's playing some key roles in transportation. Also, I think Representative Congressman Kahele may also be playing some key roles up in the federal government.
Yeah, and Congressman Kahele is from Hawaii Island. His district overlapped part of mine when he was in the Senate. And so I'm looking forward to working with him on several projects that could use some federal assistance as well.
So I also know, because as former health chair, I know this is really important. I know this is important to you, but can you talk about some of the healthcare needs that you're looking to assist with in your community with Hilo Medical Center?
Yeah, Hilo Medical Center is kind of the one of the primary opportunities for healthcare on Hawaii Island, and one of the things that we are looking at doing is an expansion of Hilo Medical Center that will allow for an expansion of the number of OB beds and the critical care opportunities that are available at Hilo Medical Center. And one of the things that will do is allow people to get treated on Hawaii Island as opposed to having to fly to Oahu for treatment.
And I know that's really important, OB care on Hawaii Island, but I also know that you had helped and assisted Hilo Medical Center with their cancer care unit as well. Is progress being made on that?
Yes, actually, they have already started groundbreaking on that project, which got funding last year. And that's one of the nice things about working with Dan Berkman, the administrator at Hilo Hospital, Hilo Medical Center. He is able to work it out so that many of the projects, when they get funded by the legislature, are shovel ready. And so as soon as the money is available, they're breaking ground. And so last year we got the funding for the oncology expansion, and right before session started, I was over at the groundbreaking for that project. And so in less than a year, we were able to get the funding and start construction. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. And likewise, with this new expansion in OB, we're also looking at getting the funding and beginning construction right away.
So the people of Big Island are lucky to have you as one of the veteran members of the Hawaii Island delegation. Thank you, Chair Nakashima, for joining me and for sharing your priorities with me. Thank you to my other guests, also CJ Recktenwald and Chief Judge Mark Browning, Representatives Matayoshi and Perruso for inviting me into their communities. We'll be heading into more hearings over the next few weeks, And the legislature as a whole will also be taking a 5-day mandatory recess beginning on February 25th. Legislators will be conducting town hall meetings, participating in hearings, and continuing to do the work of the people. If you enjoyed this segment of Talk Story, or if you have an issue or story you'd like me to dive into for a future episode, please email me at reppbellotti@capitol.hawaii.gov with your feedback. Please also follow the House Majority on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at High House Dems for the most current news, events, and updates from the State House. Please stay safe, healthy, and informed. Wear your mask in public, and remember to follow good social distancing and hygiene guidelines. We will see you next Friday, March 5th, in 2 weeks, to Talk Story with House Majority. Aloha.